Tagen einen wunderbaren Reigen deutsch-israelischer Begegnung. Vor gerade einmal einer Woche war Präsident Herzog auf Deutschlandbesuch. Jetzt du. Diese Dichte.
To those of you and those of us who are not fluent in German, we will have the German translation in just a little bit. Thanks for bearing with us.
Chancellor is not given. It is a present. We are very thankful for this present. We will never forget the crime in the Shoah and the Holocaust, the murder, the millions of murders on the Jews in the Shoah in Europe is an obligation for us to learn from the past and to fight any form of anti-Semitism. We're thankful that in Germany we do have a lively Jewish community. It is important to me and to the entire country to advance and to support Jewish life here. During my visit to Israel in March, we and the then Prime Minister Bennett, we agreed on a strategic dialogue between our two countries. Since then, more steps have been taken to advance this strategic partnership. A few days ago, our top officials met in Jerusalem for the first intercommunal dialogue. We're advancing our friendship and our partnership even more. On Sunday, our country signed a memorandum to foster a German-Israeli youth group, to foster the exchange between youth in our two countries. It is an investment into the good relations between Germany and Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is something that also bothers us. We know that this is a breach of international law. The killing in Ukraine needs to have an end. Germany, Europe, and Israel, we are standing on the side of Ukraine in these difficult times. The consequences of the Russian invasion also influence the prices of energy and food everywhere. But we try together to fight back these influences of the war. My government agreed on a package of helps for our citizens to help them go to these difficult times. Also in the European Union, we are talking about measures to lower energy prices. The Russian invasion is a Zeitenwende also for our defense. We issued a budget of 100 million euro for investments in the security of Germany and our neighbors. And we also want to work together with Israel in this. For example, in the field of aerial defense. We're talking about offers in this field of aerial defense. Another important topic of our conversation was the peace process in the Middle East. Our stance is known. A sustainable solution can only be a two-state solution, and two sides need to negotiate about this solution. In order to prevent a renewed escalation, it is important that there are steps forward in this, of course, difficult process, and there needs to be an improvement in the conditions of life for the Palestinians. There should not be one-sided measures. There is a demand to the Palestinian leadership. It has to be clear that it has a responsibility to build up a responsible Palestine. And of course, I also would like from Israel not to cause facts alone. Now, the nuclear agreement with Iran. We agree with Israel. Iran cannot get nuclear weapons. Therefore, a functional international agreement to limiting the Iranian nuclear program is the right way. I'm sad that Iran has not yet reached a positive answer to the ideas coming from the European community. The bilateral relations in the field of economy between Israel and Germany, they have potential. We can work closely together in developing new and renewable energies. Dear Prime Minister, dear Yair, it's nice that you're a guest here. I appreciate your political abilities when representing Israel. Israel is in good hands with you. After this press conference, we will also visit the Haus der Wannsee-Konferenz, the memorial. This place reminds us of keeping the memory for the victims of the Holocaust, to preserve this memory. We will meet these victims with sorrow, and we will never forget. The crime committed in the Holocaust causes our special responsibility for the State of Israel. Dear Prime Minister, dear Yair, you can rely on this. Germany stands firm on the side of the State of Israel. Israel is a close friend and partner.
Thank you, my friend Chancellor Scholz. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the son of Tommy Lapid, a Holocaust survivor from the Budapest ghetto. I am the grandson of Bela Lampel, who was murdered at Mauthausen concentration camp. And now I'm standing here on German soil as Prime Minister of the Jewish state. Later today, as you said, the Chancellor and I will travel to Wannsee House, where the infamous Wannsee Conference took place, where the final solution to the Jewish problem was planned. The result of that conference was that the death camps were built. We will meet there with Holocaust survivors and their grandchildren who came especially from Israel. This is a moment of great victory for them. They survived, they established an independent and a strong country. They return here with their heads held high as free people. I imagine, sir, that this is a complicated meeting for you. I truly appreciate your moral courage and your willingness to be part of this. The deep ties between our countries, Mr. Chancellor, are proof that humanity always have a choice. Evil can be replaced by friendship. Brutality can be replaced by human kindness and the ability to cooperate. I know, Chancellor, that you are deeply committed to the right choice. Just yesterday, our two countries signed an important MOU on youth exchange. And this visit aims to conclude the final details of a strategic partnership agreement between Israel and Germany. It followed by the strategic dialogue between our teams back in Jerusalem. This partnership has economical and security benefits. It is a practical expression of Germany's commitment to Israel's security as a Jewish and a democratic state, a commitment you reaffirmed when you took office. Israel, for its part, will play a role in building Germany's new defense force, mainly in the field of air defense, as you just mentioned. Some will certainly say that the military partnership between Germany and Israel is an historical irony. I consider it illusions from the past. Talk does not stop evil. Liberal democracies must be willing and able to defend themselves. Sometimes freedom must be defended by force. Our partnership also requires us to act together against the growing threat of Iran becoming a nuclear state. Germany is one of the E3 countries, and this is part of the responsibility it has taken upon itself. It is time to move past the failed negotiations with Iran. They cannot and will not achieve the goal we all share to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. We discussed the need for a new strategy to stop Iran's nuclear program. A nuclear Iran will destabilize the Middle East and create a nuclear arms race that will endanger the entire world. Returning to the nuclear agreement under the current conditions would be a critical mistake. Removing sanctions and pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into Iran will bring waves of terrorism, not only to the Middle East, but also across Europe. There is another way, a better way forward for the Middle East. It is the path of the Abraham Accords and the Negev Forum, a path based on shared vision for the region, a vision not of war, extremism and terrorism, but of peace, tolerance and cooperation. Our hand is outstretched for peace with all our neighbors, and it always will be. Chancellor Scholz, my friend, thank you for your warm welcome here in Berlin. As we remember our past, I look forward to continue pursuing our shared vision for the future. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Wir haben jetzt Zeit für 3 Fragen von
There is
jeder
now
Seite.
time for 3 questions from each side. First of all, Yaron Abraham.
Chancellor Scholz, you announced on Saturday, together with Britain and France, that the nuclear agreement with Iran will not be signed soon. What is your alternative? What is your plan B to this agreement? And I ask in Hebrew, Prime Minister Lapid, מספר שעות בלבד, אדוני, לפני המראתך לברלין, בטיסה שיש בה 5 ניצולי שואה שמצטרפים אליך, השווה שר בממשלתך אביגדור ליברמן את ראש האופוזיציה נתניהו ולסטלין. לא מן הראוי שדווקא כאן, כשלצדך הקנצלר, תגנה את דבריו באופן מפורש, ולא במה שנראה כמו תגובה עמומה.
There is a request there for the Chancellor to react to the words of, I believe, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
We totally agree that it is about Iran preventing from acquiring nuclear bombs and also from preventing it to acquire rockets to transport them. This is the aim that we all follow together. The E3, the European negotiator, they put forward ideas, and there is no reason for Iran not to agree to these proposals. But we also have to realize that this is not the case. So we know that in the foreseeable future it will not happen, although it looked like it would happen for some time. We will remain patient, but we also need to say that it needs to be prevented that Iran can use atomic weapons that would be devastating for the entire region.
As I said back home, I denounce what the Minister of Finance said, because I always denounce any comparison between the Holocaust and anything. It is not to be compared. So I don't think I was nothing but really clear about what I thought about what was said, and I was happy to see that the Minister of Finance took back what he said.
Als nächstes Michael Fischer von DPA.
Next, Michael Fischer from DPA.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much.
4 weeks ago, the Palestinian President Abbas was here in Berlin and here in the Chancellery, and he blamed Israel for a 50 times Holocaust. What did you feel back then when you heard those allegations, and do you think the reaction of the Chancellor was adequate? Und Herr Bundeskanzler, welche Auswirkungen hat dieser Eklat auf die Beziehungen Deutschlands zur
the sentence have on the relations of Germany to the Palestinian Authority? Are there going to be limitations of payments, and can you imagine to still have a conversation with Abbas?
It is a continuation of the question I just answered. What President Abbas said was disgraceful, was unrespectful, and horrible, just plain horrible. As I said, the Holocaust is not to be compared by anything. This kind of vocabulary, which worries me even more, doesn't exist only in speeches made on German soil by President Abbas, but also in the textbook in the Palestinian educational system. This kind of terrible incitement is part of what they teach their children. And this needs to be addressed by the civilized world in one voice. I I think the Chancellor's reaction was, I mean, he was, of course, taken off guard by this like everybody else, but I expressed to the Chancellor personally my appreciation to the way he reacted afterwards to what President Abbas was saying, and we were thankful and appreciative of his very, very firm reaction.
Es ist ganz klar, dass wir
It is very clear that we
die palästinensische Seite auffordern, dass sie
that we call upon the Palestinian side to clear the way for a democratic development and a good development
eine
that
Zwei-Staaten-Lösung überhaupt eröffnet.
enables a two-state solution. And therefore it is central
Solche Äußerungen nicht mehr
that
getätigt werden. Wir bestehen darauf, wir haben immer darauf bestanden.
these sentences will not happen anymore, and this is what we demand and we will continue to demand.
Kahana.
A question from Ariel Kahana from Israel Hayom, I believe.
Thank you for this press conference.
Okay, it's in English.
Chancellor Scholz, my question goes to the energy crisis. German citizens are gathering wood to heat their homes for the coming winter. Germany use of coal is on rise, and Europeans in general are paying much more these days and will pay even more in the future for energy. So my question is, would it be correct to say that the countries around the world made some significant mistakes in reduction of reliance on traditional energy sources and in relying too heavily on renewable sources? And what should be the lesson from this crisis to the international community? I just remind that the crisis began even before the Russian invasion to Ukraine. וראש הממשלה לפיד, אם אפשר גם תשובה בעברית, אני אשמח. אנחנו רואים בימים האחרונים, על פי מערכת הביטחון, תפקוד הולך ופוחת של הרשות הפלסטינית. האם וכיצד הממשלה נערכת למצב של קריסת הרשות הפלסטינית?
We're seeing a lot of activity of the IDF in the Palestinian Authority. Is the government preparing for a scenario in which the Palestinian Authority collapses?
What we will do, aside of the conflict we now have with Russia. We are increasing the capacity of electricity that is built by renewables. We will increase the whole production of electricity from 600 terawatt hours today up to 800 in the end of this decade, and 80% of all of this production will be from renewables, especially offshore wind, onshore wind, solar, and so on. And we will continue to do so because becoming an industrial, successful CO2 neutral country means in the end that we will electrify our economy and we will use hydrogen, and this is the path we are going and many other countries too. In the situation we are today, we understand exactly that it is necessary to become independent from the necessary supply with fossil resources from Russia, and we are quite successful in doing so. As you may have realized, since October there is no coal import or from October on there will be no coal import from Russia to European countries and also not to Germany. We get our coal shipped from other countries of the globe. And we made it to become more and more independent from the influx of oil from Russia, which is not that difficult because it's mostly shipped, and we have our transport ways to do so. And we also are working hard and intensely, and as I see it, successfully in getting independent from the supply of a pipeline that is serving two refineries in the east of Germany, but just this. So we are on the right path. And the same is with import of gas to Germany and Europe. We realized when this conflict started, or just before it, I asked my teams in December last year to prepare for the situation, that we have to do something for having the chance to get gas from other resources but Russia if there is a situation that there will be no import feasible anymore. And this is what we did. We have an increase in the supply from Norway, from the Netherlands. We have an increase from the LNG ports in the western states of Europe, Netherlands, Belgium and France, with whom we agreed on this path shortly, and we worked hard to make this happen. And we also decided that we will have an increase that we will build import infrastructure in the north of Germany, in the shores of northern Germany, to get gas into Germany with ships, which is the way to do it if there is no pipeline support as we are used to. And the first of them will open in January next year, the others during the next year. So we will have a completely modernized import infrastructure that makes it easy for us to get LNG from other sources so that we are successfully prepared. And we did the same in deciding that the storage capacities should be used. We have now filled them with more than 85% of their capacity, and we are going over 90. We have decided that we will use coal plants to produce electricity, to become independent again, because we still have them, and in this year, the next year, and the beginning of 24. And we decided that we will have the chance to use the southern nuclear plants even in this winter, in January, February, March, if necessary. So we are well prepared because we decided right in the beginning of this year to do the right things for being at this situation. And now we can say it looks all that we are able to face the situation in the question of supply. And now we are working intensely to make it feasible for the people to survive the situation economically and the companies to survive it. We have developed 3 big packages of supply for the people, which is now altogether 95 billion, which will have an impact on the way the people can face the situation. And we do it also including some measures for private companies and for the business sector, and we continue to work on this field. We decided to have an intervention in the market of electricity, which makes it impossible to have extra profits just because the price is made due to the market measures by electricity produced with gas. And so I think altogether is creating a situation where we were constantly preparing for a difficult situation in winter. And so we all knew that Putin might say there is no supply with gas anymore. And because we were so early preparing for that situation, we are now not in a comfortable situation, but in a situation where we can stay in this situation, and that we will continue to work on our future. And just to come back to the first thing you said, Germany will be one of the most successful industrial nations, but 2045 we will continue to be this, but in 45 we will be a country that is completely CO2 neutral, relying on renewables and all the chances coming from that.
Excuse me, Hebrew. I think
the right answer for this situation is the same answer always. Israel's security does not depend on anyone else but on Israel. Of course, we're concerned by the rise in terrorism, mostly around Jenin. We handle the security problems, and we don't depend on anyone for our security.
Die Ukraine hat mehrfach eindringlich um die Lieferung von Leopard 2
asked for the delivery of Leopard 2 fighting tanks.
Keine Alleingänge. Angesichts der veränderten militärischen Lage und den Erfolgen bei der Gegenoffensive werden Sie auf die westlichen Verbündeten zugehen und dafür
Will you make a step towards the Western allies and make a point for the Western ally states to deliver tanks? And are you ready to deliver Leopard 2 tanks to the Ukraine from Germany?
The Chancellor and you spoke about cooperation in the field of air defense. Could you be a little bit more specific here? Can you confirm that Germany will purchase the Arrow 3 system, and can you say something about the financial dimensions of that possible deal? Thank you.
Wir haben die Ukraine sehr umfassend zusammen mit unseren Verbündeten mit Waffen
Together with our allies, we already supported Ukraine with weapons. We delivered very effective weapons that are also making the difference in the current fighting. So what we delivered with our Gepard tank, the Howitz 2000, the rocket Mars, those are the weapons which contribute to the fact that now in the fighting, in the current fighting, to change the results like we are seeing it currently. And like I said in many other occasions, we will continue to go on this path. We will support Ukraine as long as it is necessary. And we also offered in several situations, for example, during, as I said in a speech that I had at the university, that we will support the Ukraine also in aerial defense that is also as effective. We also decided to emphasize this support. We will also emphasize our support in aerial defense. We'll advance it, and we also decided to order more of these aerial defense systems. These aerial defense systems is not something that our army has right now. We're selling it right now. And this system is also part of the cooperation with Israel, and we're offering it right now. But we're remaining with our stance that Germany has had since the beginning, and is this the stance also for the future? There's nothing that Germany will do alone.
Well, as for your first question about can I elaborate more on the Arrow 3 deal, the short answer is no. I cannot. The bit longer answer is... and this also answers the question about the financial aspect of the future possible deal, is that it has to do with our total commitment to the safety of Germany, to the safety of Europe, to the ability of liberal democracies to defend themselves, and the understanding that we are part of this effort, and therefore we have to be in close contact with our European friends. And of course Germany is one of the closest friends in Europe, and we discuss this issue with the German administration on a daily basis, actually, including today. I hope this was vague enough.
Dann als nächstes Antonia Yamin für Bild.
Hallo? Ja. Herr Bundeskanzler,
Chancellor Scholz, I wanted to ask you, you apologized several times for the scandal revolving around Abbas. You will meet 5 Holocaust survivors today. Can you tell us what you would do differently today if Abbas was to stand next to you today? If he would have used these words today that he used back then, what would your direct reaction be like?
My question to Lapid. The Chancellor talked about the two-state solution, Israel and the Palestinians. Abbas, President Abbas, said what he said in Berlin just a few weeks ago. On one hand, we have Abbas. On the other hand, there is Hamas, that is a terrorist organization. Do you see the Palestinians as a partner? And do you think Germany should receive Abbas again
Thank you. You know the strict remark that I made regarding the remarks from Abbas. They're unacceptable. Every relativation of the Holocaust is a relativation that we cannot accept and we will not accept. And it's also a crime against the victims of the Holocaust that suffered so much, experienced so much suffering, the millions of murdered European Jews. This is an exceptional crime, and it should never be relativated. We will not accept that. And I said that, and I will say that anytime, and I'm very happy that today we have the possibility to discuss with survivors. Because again and again it reminds us that our responsibility remains to fight against anti-Semitism with all kinds of strength, not only in this country but around the world. There is a shared initiative of Germany and Israel in front of the United Nations about this topic, and we cannot accept nobody and in no place we cannot accept these remarks also not for Mr. Abbas.
Excuse me, Hebrew again. I
will not stand on German soil and hold discussions on a Palestinian state, yes or no. What I told German press stands for Israeli press as well. The problem is not just what Abbas said, but also that the same content appears in their education system and in the Palestinian school books, textbooks. We are pushing back against this hatred and incitement. This is not just our role, but this is also the truth, historical truth.
So, last but not least, Andreas Rinke von Reuters.
Prime Minister, I would like to come back to the question of energy. Israel is supplying Europe with natural gas in the future. I would like to know if you have talked with the Chancellor about further increases of your supply. How much could you actually deliver? Herr Bundeskanzler, war das Thema, was erhoffen Sie sich von Israel? Könnte das einer der wichtigen Lieferanten von LNG-Gas oder Erdgas auch für Europa sein? Und erlauben Sie eine Zusatzfrage. Die Schweizer Regierung hat gerade angekündigt, dass sie
The Swiss government also announced that they want to build storage for atomic garbage right on the border. Therefore, are you in touch with the Swiss government?
Well, yes, of course. The Chancellor and I have discussed energy quite a bit and the need to cooperate on energy. Israel, as you said, will probably be able to export gas to Europe, hopefully next year. We're going to be part of the effort to replace Russian gas in Europe. We have, I mean, it's about what we have, or our capabilities right now will be about approximately 10% of what the Russians are now, or last year were exporting to Europe. So it's not a solution, it's part of the solution, and we are more than willing to be part of the solution to the energy crisis. And of course, the other forte Israeli have that you haven't mentioned is that we have a lot of Israeli startups that has to do with renewable energies and all sorts of substitute solutions to the energy crisis. And Germany, also being an innovative superpower, will be, of course, a partner that we want to cooperate with on the issues.
Ich habe nicht viel zu ergänzen.
I don't have much to add.
Für uns ist es wichtig,
For
dass
us it is important that the production of gas that we can use from sources that are not Russia, that we increase them. This has influences on the global market. Also the gas that will not reach Germany, it will reach, for example, to Europe, and has a consequence for the offer and also for the prices. We need to solve two problems. One problem is that we need to care for the technical infrastructure, the pipeline connections to European harbors that we need to advance, pipelines. We also need to speak about new energy terminals on our coast in North Germany, but also better networks that connects us with import possibilities in Southern Europe. And also we need to think about infrastructure regarding Israel. And when all of this will happen, this will contribute to us being able to offer prices and that we can face the situation in the following, in the upcoming years. And it also contributes to the change in the electricity sector, that we will be able to face it together with all the companies in that field in Germany and in Israel. And we have a great responsibility for the world together, with many others together that have similar abilities. Because if we do not manage to become independent from fossil resources and also to preserve our wealth and to advance it, we're also talking about technology technologies that others in the world can use, because we want that wealth around the globe will grow. We want also in Asia and Africa and South America, we want an equal wealth that we see here today. But this wish, we can only realize it when we do this in a sustainable manner. And we can do that with our high technology that we are developing right now.
Das ist eine Nachricht, die uns
This
so
is
erreicht hat wie
news that reached us like it did you, so
formal auch erreicht,
we will
auf dem
update you on
ordentlichen
this.
Wege als Regierung mit allen Verantwortlichen, mit der Schweizer
In the
Regierung zu
government,
besprechen.
on the government level, between the Swiss and
Meine
the
Damen
German
und Herren, ich
government.
darf mich herzlich bedanken für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit. Ich beende die Pressekonferenz.
Okay, that was the press conference there by Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, and Prime